A biting October wind swept through the quiet streets of suburban Philadelphia, carrying with it the anguished howls of a dog whose story would soon transform the lives of an entire family. To fully grasp the significance of what unfolded on that crisp autumn morning, we must first journey into the shadows of this tale's origins, a darkness that shaped a creature of fear into an unlikely symbol of hope. 2 years prior, in a crumbling house on the edge of town, a German shepherd puppy cowered within the confines of a wire cage, too small for his growing frame. The basement reeked of stale cigarettes and spilled beer, a dank, oppressive world that defined his earliest memories. Shadows loomed over him, broken only by harsh encounters with his owner, Victor Malone, a former dogfighter turned breeder of aggressive guard dogs. Victor believed cruelty forged strength. To him, this puppy, unnamed, the runt of a litter of 6, was a disappointment, too gentle for his purposes. While his siblings were sold off to dubious buyers, this one remained, subjected to Victor's brutal regimen. Food was withheld for days, then tossed in with kicks and shouts. Water, when provided, was laced with alcohol, leaving the puppy dazed and defensive. The clatter of chains used to restrain him became a sound that haunted his every tremble. Hands meant pain. A pat could twist into a yank on his ears. A scratch could tighten into a chokehold. By 8 months, the puppy had grown into a striking, yet terrified dog. His coat, meant to be thick and glossy, was patchy from stress and malnourishment. His warm, intelligent eyes had turned wild and hollow, reflecting a soul taught to snarl and bite as its only defense. Victor's so-called training was relentless, brutal exercises designed to amplify fear and aggression. Then came a night that altered the course of this young dog's life. Drunk and furious after a gambling loss, Victor reached into the cage to punish his investment. This time, the dog fought back, sinking his teeth into Victor's hand. The retaliation was swift and savage. Chained to a beam, the dog endured a merciless beating, lead pipes, broken furniture, heavy boots, until he lay bloodied and still on the cold concrete. Yet survival runs deep. In the pre-dawn hours, as Victor slept off his rage, the dog slipped free of a collar loosened by months of starvation. Injured and desperate, he clawed his way up the basement stairs and through a shattered window into an uncertain freedom. For months, he roamed Philadelphia's streets, scavenging from trash bins and shunning human contact. His injuries healed unevenly, leaving a limp and scars beneath his regrowing fur. Those who tried to help were met with growls and snapping teeth, a shield against a world that had shown him only cruelty. His existence was solitary, defined by vigilance and distrust, until fate guided him to a suburban corner on that fateful October morning. Sarah Bennett stood at her kitchen window, one hand cradling her 7-month pregnant belly, the other holding a mug of decaf tea she sipped reluctantly at her doctor's insistence. At 32, Sarah had spent 10 years as a veterinary technician at Philadelphia Animal Hospital, specializing in rehabilitating traumatized animals. Now on mandatory bed rest due to pregnancy complications, she felt adrift from her calling. A commotion outside snapped her from her thoughts. A small crowd had gathered near a lamppost on her street, their voices tense. Above the wind, she heard barking, deep, guttural, laced with a high-pitched edge of fear her trained ear instantly recognized. Ignoring her husband Daniel's cautions echoing in her mind, Sarah grabbed her coat and stepped outside. As she approached, the scene clarified. A large German shepherd mix, chained to the lamppost, his matted fur dark with filth and what appeared to be old blood. His ribs jutted beneath his coat, and a slight limp hinted at past trauma. "Animal control's coming," an older woman said, clutching a small dog. "Might take an hour. He's already tried to bite 2 people." Sarah studied the dog with professional precision. His barking was rote, a reflex rather than intent. His body spoke volumes, head low, teeth bared, tail tucked, eyes darting. "He's terrified," she murmured, more to herself than the crowd. A man in a suit scoffed, holding up a torn sleeve. "Tell that to my arm. I just wanted to check his tags." Ignoring the protests, Sarah edged closer. The barking intensified, then faltered as the dog's gaze locked onto her pregnant belly. His aggression waned, replaced by a low, uncertain whine. Here was something novel in his tormented experience, a human moving with deliberate calm, exuding no threat. Perhaps he sensed the life within her, innocent and untainted by the cruelty he'd known. Sarah's voice was soft, honed by years of soothing wounded animals. "It's okay, sweet boy. No one's going to hurt you now." The dog's instincts warred within him. Attack or trust? Her hand extended, palm up, fingers curled, a gesture of peace. He sniffed cautiously, his nose twitching at her scent. Pregnancy hormones, traces of other animals, and none of the alcohol or smoke he'd learned to dread. "That's it," Sarah encouraged. "You're so brave." Up close, his suffering was stark. A heavy chain had rubbed his neck raw. Cigarette burns scarred his muzzle. A jagged flank scar told of untreated wounds. Yet his eyes, haunted, sorrowful, held a flicker of hope beneath the pain. The crowd watched, stunned, as Sarah touched his head. He flinched, braced for a blow, but leaned into her gentle stroke, a shudder of relief rippling through him. "He's dangerous," a voice called. "Call animal control." "No," Sarah said firmly, her hand steady on his fur. "Cancel it. He's coming with me." Protests erupted, but she dialed her husband. "Daniel, I need you home on your break. Bring bolt cutters." A pause. "Sarah, you're supposed to be resting. What's happening?" "I found a dog," she replied, stroking the trembling animal. "He needs us." 30 minutes later, Daniel's car pulled up. The crowd had thinned, but a few lingered as Sarah sat beside the dog, offering water from a bottle. Daniel, a 35-year-old ER nurse, approached warily, bolt cutters in hand. The dog growled. But Sarah's touch kept him calm. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked, eyeing the dog's size and scars. "I've stitched up too many bite victims." "Look at him, Daniel," Sarah urged. "He's been through hell, but he trusts me. We can't abandon him to euthanasia or worse." Daniel sighed, a reluctant smile breaking through. "All right, but he's getting a vet check first." They cut the chain, the snap startling the dog into stillness. Freedom bewildered him. He pressed against Sarah, unsure. Getting him into the car was a struggle. Its sight triggered panic, likely tied to his past. Sarah laid her coat in the back seat, its scent coaxing him inside. He huddled against the door during the tense drive to Philadelphia Animal Hospital. Dr. Rachel Carter, Sarah's mentor, and the clinic's head vet awaited them. One glance at the dog cleared her schedule. "Exam room 3, she said, noting his flinch at sudden moves. "It's the quietest." He resisted everyone but Sarah, growling at staff. The exam revealed a litany of horrors: malnutrition, mishealed fractures in his ribs and hip, recent cigarette burns, and filed-down teeth. A dogfighter's mark. "Physically, we can help," Dr. Carter said. "Diet, maybe surgery later. But the psychological scars? That's the real challenge." Sarah nodded, her hand on his head. "He deserves a chance. Look how far he's come already." A microchip scan traced him to a shuttered puppy mill, owned by Victor Malone, now imprisoned for cruelty. "No one's reclaiming him," Daniel said, relieved. The ride home was tense, laden with new supplies. A soft leather collar, a leash, quiet bowls, a bed, all chosen to avoid triggering his past. Indoors, he startled at every sound: the fridge, the heater, the stairs he refused to climb, later linked to being kicked down basement steps. "He needs a name," Sarah said that evening, watching him explore cautiously, staying near her. Something honoring his strength, not his suffering. They chose Guardian, Ian for short, fitting his instant devotion to Sarah. He shadowed her, wary of Daniel, but unwavering in his loyalty to her. The first nights were rough. Ian's nightmares sparked barking fits. A laundry room attempt failed. He clawed the door until his paws bled. They relented, letting him sleep beside their bed, guarding Sarah. Each day brought progress: a tentative tail wag at a treat, a growl-free pet from Daniel, hours of grooming to reveal a stunning black and tan coat with a white chest patch. His intelligence emerged, sensitive to Sarah's moods, resting his head on her belly, twitching at the baby's kicks. Dr. Carter theorized, abused dogs often hyper-attuned to humans for survival. He's turned that into protection. As Sarah's due date neared, Ian's vigilance peaked. He slept pressed against her bed, anxious when she left his sight. The night her water broke, his restless pacing and urgent barks roused Daniel. During early labor, Ian stayed close, a steady presence for her to lean on. Leaving him for the hospital was agonizing. His howls followed them. Daniel's sister, Lisa, stayed with him, reporting he waited by the door. Ellie Bennett arrived after 14 hours, healthy, 2 weeks early. 3 days later, they introduced Ian to her, cautious but hopeful. He sniffed her blanket, then settled beside her carrier, a soft sigh signaling acceptance. Ian became Ellie's protector, lying beneath her bassinet, nudging her during tummy time, enduring her clumsy grabs. When she cried in distress, he'd whine, fetching Sarah. As she crawled, he herded her from hazards, gently tugging her back with his teeth. Neighbors marveled, once avoiding that dangerous dog. They now watched him play tenderly with Ellie. Sarah often reflected on that October day, the moment his barking stopped at her approach. "You knew," she whispered to Ian on Ellie's 5th birthday, watching him help unwrap gifts with practiced care, his muzzle graying. "You were meant for us." Ian's scars lingered, chain sounds, alcohol smells, and dark spaces still unnerved him. But his transformation was profound. From a frightened stray, he became a guardian angel, his story rippling through the community. Sarah shared it at the clinic, inspiring others to see past fear to the love beneath. In quiet moments, Ian and Ellie curled together, reading or playing. Sarah saw a truth: healing thrives where trust is sown. Ian, their resilient protector, proved that even the most broken hearts, human or canine, can shine when given a chance.